Come closer. The shadows have missed you, and tonight they have a new story to tell. Welcome to Scary Stories After Dark. The town of Pumpkin Eve glowed like a postcard that night. Strings of orange lights twinkled down Main Street, the chill of October air carrying the faint sweetness of apple cider and wood smoke. Families bustled beneath the harvest moon, children tugging their parents toward the patch on the edge of town, the new patch where the pumpkins seemed to shine brighter than any others. The Dawson family had waited all week for this. Harold Dawson, tall and broad-shouldered, rested a calloused hand on his son's shoulder as they crossed into the rows of pumpkins glowing like lanterns in the moonlight. His wife, Caroline, clutched their youngest in her arms, humming softly. "Remember," Harold said, voice booming with that fatherly cheer. "We're picking the biggest damn pumpkin they've got this year. None of that shriveled porch decoration nonsense. This one's for carving." Caroline rolled her eyes, but she smiled. "You mean you're the one carving it while the kids eat all the candy?" The children scattered, giggling, weaving between fat orange gourds. They ran past a crooked scarecrow planted near the field's edge, its burlap head bowed as if it were watching them. Somewhere deeper in the patch, a shape moved, though no one noticed. "Dad! Dad, look at this one!" the boy called. And there it was. A pumpkin so large it looked like it had been grown for a carnival contest, perfectly round, perfectly orange. Its skin glistened with dew under the harvest moon, its stem curling like a clawed finger. Harold whistled. "Now that's what I'm talking about." He bent, heaved it up with a grunt, and laughed. "This one's coming home." That night, the Dawson house smelled of cinnamon and pumpkin spice. Caroline had baked a pie while Harold set the prized pumpkin in the corner of the living room, proud as if he'd brought home a trophy. The children sat cross-legged on the carpet, staring at it like it were a gift-wrapped present waiting for Halloween night. But when the clock struck midnight, the house groaned. The pumpkin's skin rippled. A crack split down its middle with a wet, tearing sound. Inside, something glistened, not pulp, not seeds, but rows of jagged teeth slick with stringy orange gore. Vine-like limbs unfurled across the hardwood, curling and twitching as though tasting the air. The youngest stirred in her bed upstairs. Harold snored in the recliner. Caroline dreamed of the pie cooling on the counter. None of them heard the soft drag of vines sliding across the floor until the first scream. It came from the bedroom. The boy's voice, high and thin, cut through the silence, then choked off with a gurgle. Caroline bolted upright, racing down the hall, only to find the door half shut, shadows writhing inside. A pumpkin glow leaked out, unnatural, pulsing like a heartbeat. She pushed the door open. Her son was gone. The sheets shredded. The pumpkin, their pumpkin, loomed on the bed, its mouth stretched impossibly wide, seeds and blood dripping from its teeth. It turned toward her. Caroline screamed, but the sound never left her throat before vines wrapped around her neck and pulled her in. Downstairs, Harold awoke to thuds above him. He staggered up, rubbing his eyes, just as something heavy fell from the banister, splattering on the rug with a wet slap. it was his wife's arm. He barely had time to scream before the pumpkin dropped from the staircase, teeth gnashing, vines snapping like whips. The house fell silent again before dawn. Only the scent of cinnamon lingered. By morning, neighbors found the front door open, the family gone. A trail of seeds led out into the yard, where the perfect pumpkin sat on the porch once more, smooth, whole, innocent. The bell above Marin's bakery chimed when Sheriff Doyle pushed through the door, though no warm scent of bread greeted him. The town's favorite baker, Edith Marin, always had the ovens running before sunrise. For 40 years, she'd been up before the roosters, her cinnamon rolls winning county fairs, her pumpkin pies drawing travelers from miles away. But that morning, the ovens were cold. "Edith?" Doyle called. His voice echoed strangely in the quiet shop. The sheriff's boots tracked flour across the tiled floor. On the counter, a half-frosted tray of donuts sat abandoned, icing hardened into pale crusts. A coffee pot still steamed faintly. Behind the counter, something dripped. The sheriff stepped closer, his breath frosting in the morning chill. A trail of orange pulp led toward the kitchen door, seeds scattered like breadcrumbs, glistening wet. He pushed the door open. Edith was there, slumped against the pantry wall, her apron soaked in crimson. Her throat was torn open, her face slack, eyes glassy with shock. Around her, vines curled like snakes across the linoleum, green but slick with blood. In her lap rested a pumpkin, squat and ugly, its orange skin split into a jagged grin. Doyle froze, bile rising in his throat. The thing looked ordinary now, just a pumpkin, smooth and harmless. But Edith's hands told another story. They were shredded, her palms carved with deep grooves as if she'd tried to pry something off her face. "God help us," Doyle whispered. By noon, rumors had spread. Children whispered about a monster in the bakery. Tourists lined up on Main Street as if nothing had happened, clutching sacks of cider donuts and baskets of pumpkins. To them, Pumpkin Eve was still perfect, still safe. Only a handful of townsfolk knew the truth, that two families hadn't shown up to church, and now Edith Marin was lying cold in her shop. And none of them yet realized that more pumpkins were waking. The rented house was nothing special, 2 stories, peeling white paint, sagging porch, but to Chance, Waylon, and Mateo, it was independence, a place without parents, curfews, or rules. Just 3 mid-20 best friends, fresh out of college, ready to take on the world, or at least take on Pumpkin Eve's cheap rent. "Home sweet crap hole," Waylon muttered, shouldering a box through the doorway. His black leather jacket squeaked as he nudged it open with his boot. Inside, the living room smelled faintly of dust and mildew. Chance dropped his duffel bag with a dramatic grunt. "Hey, don't knock it. Rent's cheaper than a slasher flick marathon at Blockbuster." Mateo wheezed, staggering in with a stack of records. "Speaking of marathons, can one of you carry the rest of the boxes? My arms are spaghetti." He dumped them on the shag carpet and collapsed against the wall. "I'm too pretty for manual labor." "You're too soft for manual labor," Waylon shot back. Chance grinned, leaning against the doorframe like he was posing for an invisible camera. His hair was feathered to perfection, his jeans ripped just enough to look rebellious. "All right, gentlemen, tonight we christen this place with beer, pizza, and..." He paused for effect, raising an imaginary trophy. "Pumpkins, because no bachelor pad is complete without jack-o'-lanterns watching your every move." Waylon arched an eyebrow. "Pumpkins?" "Yeah, think about it. Halloween's in 2 weeks. This town's famous for them, man. We grab a few, carve 'em up, set 'em on the porch. Instant curb appeal. Chicks dig festive guys." Mateo snorted. "Right, nothing says romance like a rotting vegetable." "Correction," Chance said, pointing. "A rotting pumpkin. This is Pumpkin Eve, baby, tradition." Waylon groaned, but a smirk tugged at his lips. "Fine, but you're hauling the damn things back here yourself." "Deal." Chance slapped him on the shoulder. "Tomorrow we're hitting the patch. Biggest, roundest pumpkins they've got." Outside, the autumn wind stirred. Across town, police sirens wailed faintly. But inside their peeling rental, laughter filled the air. 3 best friends settling into their new life, completely unaware that the pumpkins waiting in the fields weren't decorations. They were teeth and vines wrapped in orange skin. And they were hungry. Morning sun burned off the fog clinging to Pumpkin Eve, but it didn't bring comfort. Sheriff Doyle's cruiser rolled down Maple Row, radio squawking with chatter from deputies scattered across town. Another missing family, another open door, another trail of seeds glistening like breadcrumbs into the night. But the worst call came from Main Street, the hardware store. Doyle pushed inside, the faint clang of a broken bell announcing his entrance. The aisles smelled of sawdust and oil, but behind the counter the air was sharp, metallic. Blood metallic. Eugene Carter, the store's owner, lay crumpled against shelves of garden tools. His chest was torn open, shirt soaked crimson, ribs cracked like splintered wood. His hands clutched at something frozen in death grip. Doyle knelt, pried them apart. A pumpkin stem. Thick green, snapped clean like it had been ripped from the root. The sheriff's stomach turned. The body wasn't the worst of it. Eugene's face was. His mouth stretched wide in silent scream, cheeks split as though something had tried to force its way in. On the counter above him, one of the display jack-o'-lanterns sat grinning, knife still embedded in its crown. To anyone else, it looked like some kid's prank. To Doyle, it looked like a goddamn message. By noon, whispers snaked through Pumpkin Eve. The bakery. The Dawsons. Now Eugene Carter. People spoke in hushed tones at the diner, clutching coffee cups, eyes darting to the window displays lined with plump orange pumpkins. The same pumpkins that made their town famous, the same pumpkins drawing tourists in by the truckload. And outside, the fields stretched on, acres of orange under the autumn sky. Beautiful, silent, patient. The night hummed with crickets when Bill Harker, the town mechanic, slid beneath a rusted Chevy in his garage. The radio crackled overhead with faint static between 80s rock tracks, the air thick with oil and exhaust. Bill had stayed late. He always stayed late, working by the glow of a single hanging bulb. something rolled across the floor. A round scrape, soft but deliberate, echoing under the chassis. Bill frowned, slid out from beneath the car, and reached for his wrench. Nothing. Just the bulb swaying slightly, shadows bending across the walls. Then, thump. A pumpkin sat at the edge of the light. Small, squat, perfectly round. Bill snorted. Kids and their pranks. He grabbed it, meaning to toss it out the door. The thing felt heavier than it should have, skin almost pulsing with warmth. He set it on the counter, turned back to his tools. Behind him, a wet crack split the air. The pumpkin's skin tore open, teeth, gleaming, jagged, seed slick, unfurled from the orange flesh. Vines lashed from its base, slapping the concrete with a wet smack. Bill spun around. Holy. The thing launched at him, teeth sinking into his shoulder. He screamed, wrench clattering to the floor. Vines wrapped his arms, yanking him backward against the workbench. The radio skipped, fizzed with static as the pumpkin gnawed through tendon and bone. Bill's scream warped into a gurgle. When the bulb finally burned out, the garage fell silent. By morning, the Chevy still sat unfinished, tools scattered across the floor. The radio played faintly, looping the same song. In the corner where Bill had fallen, only a trail of seeds remained. And a pumpkin. Ordinary, harmless, waiting. Saturday morning brought the Pumpkin Eve Fall Festival, music, banners, hayrides. Tourists crowded the square, admiring rows of carved jack-o'-lanterns lined up for the annual contest. Children ran laughing between booths. Vendors handed out caramel apples. At the center of it all, Mayor Whitcomb stood at the podium, booming with small-town pride. Another year, another harvest, he declared. Let's give thanks to our farmers who bless us with the best damn pumpkins in the county. The crowd cheered. Cameras flashed. Behind him, the largest pumpkin in the contest display gleamed like polished bronze, its orange skin perfect, stem curling high like a crown. Kids pressed close to it, whispering in awe. Then it moved. At first, no one noticed. A slight bulge, a faint twitch. But the children shrieked when the crack split down its middle, seeds spraying across the podium. The pumpkin's face tore into a jagged maw, teeth glistening in the autumn sun. The mayor turned, stunned. The thing lunged, its jaws clamped around his head with a wet crunch. The microphone squealed feedback as the mayor's body convulsed, blood spraying across the banner behind him. Welcome to Pumpkin Eve. The crowd erupted in chaos. Parents yanked children back, tourists screamed, cameras dropped to the pavement. Pumpkins lined across the stage began to tremble, 1, 2, then half a dozen splitting open with snarling grins, vines lashing into the air. The festival turned into a slaughter. By the time deputies emptied their revolvers and the smoke cleared, the podium was in ruins. The pumpkins lay still once more, ordinary, harmless, but the mayor's body was gone. All that remained was his severed hand clutching the microphone, seeds dripping from his ring. The air smelled of hay and cider when Chance's old Chevy rattled down the dirt road toward Holloway's pumpkin patch. The town might have been buzzing about the festival disaster, but Chance refused to let a few weird accidents ruin his decorating plans. "You hear the way people screamed yesterday?" Waylon muttered from the passenger seat, arms crossed. His sunglasses hid the dark circles under his eyes. Mayor's head practically exploded in front of the whole damn town. Mateo slouched in the back, clutching a paper bag of greasy fries. "Yeah, and what does Chance want to do? Go buy pumpkins. Genius move." He stuffed a fry in his mouth. "If I get eaten by a squash, I'm haunting your ass." Chance grinned, flicking the radio dial until he found Van Halen. "Come on, you two. Don't tell me you actually believe the rumors. Pumpkins don't kill people. It's just bad luck. Wrong place, wrong time." "Tell that to the mayor's missing head," Waylon shot back. But the truck bumped into the gravel lot all the same. Beyond the fence, rows of pumpkins glowed under the autumn sun, endless and bright. Families wandered between them, laughing, snapping Polaroids, as if nothing in Pumpkin Eve was wrong. At the gate, an old man leaned against a post, straw hat low over his face. His skin was weathered, eyes hidden in shadow. He gave a crooked smile as Chance passed him a few crumpled bills. "You boys pick careful now," the old man rasped. "Not every pumpkin's meant to be taken home." Mateo blinked. "What's that supposed to mean?" The man just chuckled, voice dry as corn husks. "They choose you." The friends fanned out through the rows. Children tugged at their parents, tourists snapped pictures, but in the middle of the patch it felt quieter, heavier, like the air itself held its breath. "Look at this one," Chance said, crouching beside a pumpkin so large it barely seemed real. Perfectly round, perfectly orange, its skin shimmered faintly with dew. "Biggest one here, told you." Waylon frowned, stepping closer. Something about the stem, it looked twisted, almost like it curled toward Chance's hand. "Yeah," Mateo muttered. "Or maybe it looks like it wants to eat us." Chance laughed, already lifting it with a grunt. "Say hello to our Halloween centerpiece, boys." Behind them, the old man at the gate watched silently. His smile didn't reach his eyes. And deep within the patch, among hundreds of glowing pumpkins, a low groan rippled, like vines stirring beneath the soil. The blinds in the Pumpkin Eve Sheriff's Office were drawn tight, though the October sun still leaked in faint strips, painting the room in slats of gold and shadow. Sheriff Doyle stood at the head of the long table, a styrofoam cup of cold coffee sweating in his hand. 3 deputies sat across from him, eyes ringed red from lack of sleep. The smell of cigarettes clung to their uniforms. "All right," Doyle began, voice low. "That makes 4 bodies we've pulled in 3 days. Dawson family, Edith Marin, Eugene Carter, Bill Harker." He paused, throat tightening. "And now the mayor, in front of half the town." Deputy Huxley slammed his fist on the table. "This isn't random. No way in hell. Some psychos out there, maybe a cult." "Or animals," said another, his voice shaking. "We've had bear sightings, coyotes. It could be..." "Coyotes don't rip a man's chest open and scatter seeds across the floor," Doyle snapped. The words hung heavy. The deputies shifted uneasily. Doyle rubbed a hand across his face. He hadn't slept since Edith's bakery, since the image of her lifeless hands clutching that stem branded itself into his mind. He couldn't shake the pumpkin on her lap, its grin so ordinary it mocked him. Huxley leaned forward. "Sheriff, the townsfolk are scared out of their minds. We got parents locking their kids indoors, businesses closing early, half of them whispering about demons, the other half saying the town's cursed." "They're not wrong," Doyle muttered under his breath. The deputy stared. "What?" He shook his head. "Nothing, just nothing about this makes sense." The room fell silent. Outside, the wind rattled the flag against its pole. Then the radio crackled. A voice cut in, tinny with static. "Sheriff! We just found another one, out on Willow Lane." Doyle's blood ran cold. Willow Lane. The street where 3 young men had just rented the old Lambert house. Chance, Waylon, Mateo. Sheriff Doyle's cruiser crunched over the gravel shoulder, headlights cutting through the fog that still clung low to the ground. Deputies Huxley and Crane waited on the curb, their faces pale under the street lamp glow. "What have we got?" Doyle asked, climbing out. Crane swallowed hard, gesturing toward the cracked walkway leading up to a pale blue house. "Neighbors called it in, said they heard screaming just after midnight. Family of 3. We found what's left." Doyle's gut turned before he even stepped inside. The front door hung open, its frame splintered inward. Inside, the living room looked like a storm had torn through, couch shredded, lamp toppled, blood smeared in streaks across the walls. But what made Doyle's throat go dry was the trail of seeds. They glistened in the carpet, pale and wet, leading from the front door through the house like a grotesque breadcrumb path. They ended at the dining table. 3 chairs sat pulled out. On each one, neatly placed like some kind of offering, was a folded pile of clothing. Shirts, pants, socks, no bodies, no blood on the fabric. Just the faint reek of iron lingering in the air. On the table itself sat a pumpkin, small, smooth, untouched, except for the stem, twisted and broken as though it had been ripped from something larger. Doyle's jaw clenched. He stepped back, hand shaking as he pulled his hat lower over his eyes. "Bag it," he said flatly. "And for God's sake, don't let anyone in town hear the details. Just call it another disappearance." But as he turned to leave, his boots crunching over the seeds, he froze. On the front porch, across the street, another house stood silent, the Lambert house, freshly rented, porch light glowing. A moving truck parked in the drive. Shadows of 3 young men laughed inside, tossing boxes, settling in. Doyle's gut twisted. He knew their parents. He'd seen those boys grow up. And now they were living 1 street away from hell. The Lambert house smelled faintly of beer and cardboard. Boxes were stacked half open in the corners, records scattered across the floor. Chance balanced on a chair, stringing up orange lights across the living room window while Van Halen blared from the stereo. Mateo lounged on the couch, bag of chips crinkling in his lap. "I give it 2 weeks before the landlord sues us for noise complaints." Waylon sat on the floor assembling a busted coffee table, cigarette dangling from his lips. 2 weeks? You're optimistic. Chance hopped down, grinning, and clapped his hands. Gentlemen, behold, our home is officially festive. In the corner, on a milk crate, sat the pumpkin, the one they'd dragged from Holloway's patch. It gleamed faintly in the glow of the orange lights, skin smooth, stem curling just slightly toward the ceiling. Mateo tossed a chip in his mouth, eyeing it. That thing's staring at me. It's a pumpkin, not your ex, Chance said, cracking open another beer. Tomorrow we carve it. Tonight we admire its plump glory. Waylon exhaled smoke, studying it through narrowed eyes. Too perfect. Looks fake, like one of those props in the window at Spencer's. Spencer's pumpkins don't weigh 100 pounds, man. Chance raised his beer in a mock toast. To Pumpkin Eve, our new house and our glorious Halloween mascot. They clinked cans. Laughter filled the room. But in the corner, the pumpkin sat silent. Its skin twitched, almost imperceptibly, like something shifting beneath. The stereo fizzed for a heartbeat, static crawling under the guitar solo, then cleared again. None of them noticed. Outside, a siren wailed faintly, somewhere down Willow Lane. The Starlight Diner sat at the edge of town, neon sign buzzing pink against the dark. Inside, the last of the coffee cooled in half-empty mugs, while a jukebox crooned an old ballad to no one in particular. Waitress Donna Lee wiped down the counter, humming under her breath, eager to clock out. It had been a strange week, customers whispering about disappearances, the mayor's death replayed on the TV over and over. But here, in the hum of neon and grease, it almost felt normal. Almost. The bell over the door jingled. Donna froze, rag in hand. She hadn't heard a car pull up. "Sorry, we're closed," she called, voice cracking slightly. No answer. Something round sat in the doorway, small, orange. A pumpkin. Donna frowned. All right, very funny, kids pulling pranks again. She stepped around the counter, grabbed it by the stem, meaning to toss it back outside. It was heavier than it looked, the skin strangely warm under her palms. She set it on a booth seat and turned back toward the register. Behind her, a wet crack split the air. The pumpkin burst open, teeth peeling back in jagged rows. Vines shot across the vinyl booth, snapping toward her ankles. Donna screamed, bolting for the door, but the bell above it jingled uselessly as vines slammed it shut. Her cries echoed against chrome and neon. By dawn, the Starlight Diner was silent, the counter spotless, the jukebox still spinning. Only a few seeds glistened on the black and white tiles, catching the pink glow of the sign outside. The Lambert house was alive with music and sarcasm. Chance had switched the stereo to cassettes. Waylon was rolling his eyes at Mateo's impression of Freddy Krueger, and empty beer cans already littered the coffee table. But the pumpkin sat in the corner. It hadn't moved, not in any way they could see, but the room felt heavier somehow, like a storm pressing down on the walls. The glow of the orange string lights reflected off its smooth skin, casting faint shadows across the floor. "All right, gentlemen," Chance announced, arms wide like a game show host. "Tomorrow we carve, tonight we party." Mateo raised his can in mock salute. to our giant orange roommate who hasn't killed us yet. Waylon snorted smoke from his nose, flicking ash into a tray. Yet being the key word. They laughed, and the moment dissolved back into warmth and noise. But the stereo popped with static, just for a second. A guitar solo warped into white hiss before snapping back. Mateo frowned, glanced at it, then shrugged. Behind them, the pumpkin stem twitched. Just once, subtle. The air grew colder. From the kitchen, a low creak echoed like someone had stepped on the old floorboards. All three men froze, glancing toward the doorway. "Did you?" Waylon started. "Probably the house settling," Chance said too quickly, too loud. But none of them noticed the faint line splitting down the pumpkin's side. Not wide, not yet, just enough for something inside to press against the skin, stretching it like breath against a balloon. Watching. Waiting. The clock ticked past 1 a.m. The house had gone quieter, music turned down low, only the steady hum of the fridge breaking the silence. Chance lay stretched across the couch, half asleep with an empty beer can balanced on his chest. Mateo dozed on the floor, curled around a pillow. Waylon was still awake. He sat in the recliner, cigarette glowing faintly, eyes fixed on the pumpkin in the corner. It looked different in the dark, the skin less vibrant, more slick, like it had been sweating. The stem curled lower, almost like it was wilting toward the floor. Waylon narrowed his eyes. The smoke from his cigarette seemed to drift toward it, pulled by a breath he couldn't hear. He blinked. For just a heartbeat, he thought he saw the skin ripple, like something shifting inside. "Hell no," he muttered under his breath. The stereo fizzed with static. A warped voice pushed through for half a second, like a man whispering backwards. Then silence again. Mateo stirred, groaning. "Turn that off, man. Creepy as hell." "It's not me," Waylon said, but his voice was low. Chance snored softly. The pumpkin sat silent, still, ordinary. Waylon leaned forward, stubbed out his cigarette, and shook his head. "It's just a pumpkin," he whispered. But when he finally let himself close his eyes, he didn't see sleep. He saw teeth. Morning light leaked through dusty blinds, painting the living room in thin stripes. Chance stretched on the couch, yawning. Mateo shuffled toward the kitchen, muttering about coffee. Waylon rubbed his temples, eyes burning from lack of sleep. "Anyone else hear that radio freak out last night?" Waylon asked. "Dude," Mateo said, spoon clattering into his cereal bowl. "You probably dreamed it. You were baked." "I wasn't," Waylon muttered. "Something's off in this house." Chance waved him off, grin lazy. "You're paranoid. Only thing off in this house is Mateo's socks. Christ, man, burn those." They laughed. The tension slipped for a heartbeat. Then the sound came. Crack. All three froze. The noise was sharp, wet, like wood splitting under pressure. It came from the corner. From the pumpkin. They turned together. A line had torn down its side, splitting the skin open. Inside, something pulsed, slick and orange, like muscles straining beneath a wound. seeds dribbled out, wet against the floorboards. "What the hell?" Mateo whispered, stepping back. The pumpkin shuddered, the split widened, and then it screamed. A sound like tearing metal and animal shriek fused together, vines whipped outward, snapping across the floor. One caught Mateo's ankle, yanking him off his feet. He hit the ground hard, cereal scattering across the rug. Chance lunged to grab him, but another vine lashed, splitting the coffee table in two like it was balsa wood. The pumpkin's mouth opened wide, teeth glistening with stringy pulp, and beneath that, something darker, hungrier. Waylon swore, kicking over a lamp. "It's alive." The pumpkin lunged, dragging Mateo across the floor toward its gnashing maw. Mateo screamed as the vine dragged him across the floor, his nails clawing grooves in the wood. The pumpkin's mouth split wider, seeds spilling like spit, teeth glistening in the morning light. "Grab him!" Waylon roared. Chance didn't hesitate. He dove, catching Mateo's wrists, just as the vine yanked again. The pull nearly tore Mateo from his grip, their knuckles whitening as Chance dug his heels into the rug. "Don't let go!" Mateo shrieked, voice cracking. Another vine lashed out, wrapping tight around Chance's forearm. Thorns tore through denim, biting into his skin. Blood spattered across the pumpkin's glowing grin. "Son of a..." Chance roared, kicking at it. "It's eating me alive!" Waylon ripped the lamp cord from the wall, sparks hissing. With a snarl, he whipped it around the vine, choking Chance's arm, yanking hard. The pumpkin shrieked, an awful metallic wail, releasing its grip. "Go! Go!" Waylon shouted. He swung again, the lamp shattering against the floor. Glass and sparks flew. The pumpkin reeled, vines snapping wildly, smashing through the coffee table, overturning chairs, spraying pulp across the walls. Mateo scrambled free, clutching his shredded ankle, face pale. "It's a goddamn monster," he gasped. "No kidding," Chance bellowed, grabbing a beer bottle and smashing it against the counter. He plunged the jagged glass into a vine, seeds bursting across his face. The pumpkin screeched, recoiling, vines thrashing harder. One ripped through the drywall with a sick crack. Another wrapped around the stereo, hurling it across the room. It shattered against the far wall, Van Halen's last note cutting off mid-scream. Waylon's chest heaved, sweat dripping down his face. "Kitchen, now!" The three of them stumbled, shoving through flying debris, slamming the door behind them just as a vine punched straight through it, splinters flying. The house shook with the pumpkin's roar. The kitchen stank of sweat and blood. Chance leaned against the counter, clutching his bleeding arm, seeds sticking to his skin like leeches. Mateo sat on the linoleum, pant leg soaked red where the vine had shredded his ankle. Waylon braced himself against the fridge, chest heaving, cigarette shaking between his fingers. For a long moment, none of them spoke. The only sound was the muffled thud of vines slamming against the other side of the kitchen door. Wood splintered, hinges groaned, but the door held for now. Finally, Mateo's voice broke the silence, thin and trembling. That was a pumpkin." "No, really?" Chance snapped, wincing as he pressed a rag to his arm. "Thanks for the play-by-play." Waylon blew out a shaky breath, smoke curling toward the ceiling. "We just got attacked by a vegetable." He let out a harsh laugh that cracked halfway. "And it almost killed us." "This is insane," Mateo whispered. His hands wouldn't stop trembling. "Pumpkins don't move. They don't have teeth." "Well, this one does," Chance growled. He slammed his beer bottle against the counter, glass cracking, pulp still dripping down his shirt. "And it's in our goddamn living room." The door shuddered violently. A vine punched through the thin wood, writhing blindly in the air, snapping like a whip before retracting again. Waylon's cigarette burned down to the filter. He dropped it, grinding it out under his heel. "We can't stay in here. That thing's not stopping until we're mulch." "Then what?" Mateo asked, eyes wide. "We run? Where? It's broad daylight. People will think we're drunk idiots running from a pumpkin." Chance met his gaze, jaw tight. "Then we show them. We drag that bastard into the street if we have to, but I'm not dying in this kitchen." The house groaned. Another vine split the door frame. And the pumpkin screamed again, a sound that made the plates in the cabinets rattle. The kitchen door finally gave way with a crack like a gunshot. Wood splintered, hinges tore loose, and the pumpkin rolled into the kitchen, jaws wide, vines snapping in every direction. "Move!" Waylon shouted. The three bolted, Mateo half-hobbled, limping hard on his shredded ankle, Chance supporting him as they burst into the hallway. Vines lashed after them, slamming into walls, gouging deep scars into the plaster. One vine snapped a cabinet door clean off its hinges. They stumbled up the staircase, the old boards creaking under their weight. Behind them, the pumpkin clawed its way forward, vines gripping the banister, pulling its bulk up each step like some monstrous spider. "Upstairs!" Chance bellowed. They crashed into the first bedroom, slamming the door shut. Waylon shoved a dresser against it, chest heaving. Silence. Then, crack. A vine punched through the wood, inches from Waylon's head. He swore and stumbled back. "Jesus Christ," Mateo gasped, clutching his leg. "It won't stop." "Of course it won't stop," Chance roared, pacing, eyes wild. "We dragged it here. It's ours now." The pumpkin screeched from the hall, wood splintering under each blow. Waylon's eyes darted to the window. "Second floor." He yanked it open, cold October air rushing in. "We jump." "You're insane," Chance spat. "Better insane than dead." Waylon grabbed Mateo under the arm. "Come on, before it breaks through." The dresser groaned. Another vine slammed through, tearing chunks of wood away. Chance hesitated only a second before climbing onto the sill. "All right, boys, time to fly." Behind them, the door exploded inward. The pumpkin roared, teeth gnashing, vines snapping forward. And all three leapt into the night. The three hit the ground hard, rolling across brittle autumn grass. Mateo cried out as his ankle buckled, Chance dragging him upright. Waylon staggered to his feet, scanning the yard with wild eyes. "Move," he barked. "It's coming." The Lambert house groaned as the pumpkin smashed through the second-story window. Glass rained down in glittering shards. The thing hauled itself out, vines gripping the siding, dragging its massive orange bulk across the wall like a spider in reverse. Neighbors' porch lights flicked on, curtains twitched, a dog barked somewhere down the street. "What the hell is that?" a man shouted from his yard, frozen in disbelief as the pumpkin dropped heavily onto the grass, shaking the ground. The pumpkin's maw split wide, a guttural scream tearing through the night. Its vines lashed, ripping into the soil, uprooting fence posts. "Run!" Chance bellowed. He half-carried Mateo toward the street, Waylon sprinting ahead. The pumpkin lunged after them, vines cracking across the pavement like whips. One vine smashed into a parked car, caving the hood with a deafening crunch. Alarms wailed, echoing down Willow Lane. Porch lights blazed to life up and down the street. Neighbors spilled out onto lawns, gasping, shouting, some frozen in place, others bolting back inside. And then sirens. Red and blue lights spilled across the houses as a cruiser screeched around the corner. Sheriff Doyle stepped out, revolver in hand, eyes going wide at the sight before him. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. The pumpkin turned, its grin glistened with blood and pulp. And it started toward him. Sheriff Doyle fired first. The crack of his revolver split the night, echoing down the street. The bullet slammed into the pumpkin's thick orange skin, splattering pulp, seeds, and something darker. The monster shrieked, staggering, but it didn't stop. Its vines lashed forward, shattering the cruiser's windshield in a single blow. "Light it up!" Doyle barked. Two deputies unloaded their shotguns, buckshot ripping into the creature. Chunks of orange flesh sprayed across the pavement, seeds bouncing off mailboxes and porches. But the pumpkin only roared louder. Its vines whipped out, snapping around one deputy's leg, yanking him off his feet. He screamed as it dragged him across the asphalt, sparks flying from his boots. "Hold him!" Doyle shouted, firing again. The deputy's scream cut off as the pumpkin's maw closed over him. The crunch echoed like bones breaking under a hammer. When it pulled back, only his empty hat hit the ground. "Fall back," Doyle roared, his voice cracking. "Fall back." But the thing kept coming, crawling over the cruiser, vines snapping through the red-blue wash of the lights. Seeds glistened in its teeth as it turned toward the crowd of neighbors gathering in stunned silence. Doyle's chest tightened. He'd seen evil before, bar fights gone too far, men with knives and grudges, but nothing like this, nothing that grinned while it swallowed his town. He raised his revolver again, hand trembling, and fired until the hammer clicked on empty chambers. And still the pumpkin rolled forward. The quiet charm of Willow Lane shattered under screams. Porch lights flickered as neighbors poured into the street, half-dressed in pajamas, clutching children to their chests. Some froze in shock, others ran, tripping over fences and hedges. The pumpkin roared, hurling itself against Doyle's cruiser. Metal crumpled like foil. A vine whipped out, catching a mailbox and ripping it clean from the ground before hurling it through a living room window. "Fall back," Doyle shouted, but the words were lost in the chaos. Another deputy fired his shotgun point blank, then screamed as a vine shot through his chest, bursting out his back in a spray of blood and seeds. His body crumpled in the street, lifeless. Chance, Waylon, and Mateo stumbled from the yard, wild-eyed, breath ragged. They pushed into the screaming crowd, shoving through panicked neighbors. "Jesus Christ," Mateo gasped, clutching his ankle. "It's killing everyone." "No," Waylon snapped, voice hard despite the panic in his eyes. "It's not killing everyone. It's killing anyone who gets in the way." He grabbed Chance's arm. "We brought it here." Chance shook his head violently, blood streaking his sleeve. "Don't you start with that shit." "Don't you get it?" Waylon snapped, eyes flashing. It chose us. That old man at the patch, he warned us. The pumpkin screeched, vines slamming down into the pavement, cracking the street like an earthquake. A car alarm wailed, neighbors fled, and Sheriff Doyle stood frozen, revolver shaking uselessly in his hand. Chance met Waylon's gaze, something fierce rising in his chest. Then we end it. End it? Mateo's voice cracked, terror spilling out. How the hell do you kill a pumpkin that won't die? Waylon's eyes narrowed. You burn it. We burn the whole damn patch. The pumpkin's grin widened, as if it somehow heard. Seeds dribbled from its maw, glowing faintly in the streetlight. And then it lunged. Pumpkin Eve woke to silence, the kind of silence that pressed on your chest, heavy, suffocating. The streets of Willow Lane were cordoned off with yellow tape. Patrol cars sat abandoned, windshields shattered, metal bent into shapes no storm could have caused. Pulp clung to the pavement, seeds glistening in the gutter like spilled pearls. Neighbors whispered on porches, huddled in robes, clutching coffee cups they didn't drink from. No one spoke the word out loud, no one wanted to admit it. But every eye darted to the fields on the edge of town, to the patch that glowed faintly orange even in daylight. Inside the Lambert house, Chance sat at the table, arm bandaged, jaw clenched. He hadn't slept. Waylon leaned against the fridge, cigarette smoke curling around his head, his expression hard. It's not stopping. You saw it. They shot it to pieces, and it just kept coming. Mateo slumped in a chair, ankle-wrapped, face pale. His voice was hoarse. Half the street's dead, man. The mayor's gone. Cops are gone. And he trailed off, staring at his trembling hands. We should have never touched that pumpkin. Silence. Then Waylon said it, voice flat but certain. We end it at the source, burn the patch. Chance finally looked up, eyes bloodshot but fierce. Even if we find it, how the hell do we stop a whole field of those things? Waylon's cigarette flared. Gasoline. Mateo shook his head. You're insane. No. Waylon leaned forward, smoke curling from his lips. I'm alive, and that's the only way we stay that way. The house groaned as if agreeing. Outside, the wind carried a faint sound, like hundreds of vines shifting in the soil just beneath the surface. Waiting. The Lambert house reeked of smoke and blood. The trio sat among overturned furniture and shattered glass, the aftermath of their night carved into the walls. Chance dragged a duffel bag onto the table, zippers rasping loud in the silence. One by one, he tossed items inside, flashlights, rope, kitchen knives. His jaw was tight, eyes rimmed red, but his hands were steady. Waylon strode in from the garage with 2 rusted red cans of gasoline. This'll do it, he muttered, setting them down with a heavy thud. The fumes filled the air immediately, sharp, promising. Mateo leaned back, pale and sweating, his ankle wrapped in a makeshift bandage. He stared at the cans like they were coffins. You realize how insane this is? We're 3 guys with no plan about to torch half a farm. Waylon lit a cigarette, his expression unreadable in the thin curl of smoke. Not half a farm. The source. We end it there. Chance slammed a knife into the table hard enough to make Mateo flinch. He's right. It started at the patch. It ends at the patch. Silence fell again. The house seemed to creak around them as though listening. Then Mateo's laugh broke it, thin and nervous. God, we sound like the idiots in those horror movies, the ones who always get killed first. Chance gave a sharp grin. Then let's make sure we're the first ones who fight back. They worked in grim silence after that. Gas cans sloshed as they were loaded into the Chevy's bed, knives and axes wrapped in rags, flashlights tested, batteries swapped. Every sound outside, wind through the trees, the hollow creak of the porch swing, set their nerves on edge. By the time the truck roared to life, the October sun was dipping low, the sky bruised purple and orange. The fields ahead stretched endless, rows of pumpkins glowing faintly like lanterns waiting for night. Mateo whispered, almost to himself, "Feels like we're driving straight into hell." Waylon flicked ash out the window. "We are." The Chevy rattled down the dirt road, its headlights cutting tunnels through the October fog. The sky above bled from bruised purple to black, the last shred of daylight dying on the horizon. The patch sprawled ahead like an orange ocean, rows of pumpkins glowing faintly in the dark, too perfect, too still. The truck rolled to a stop, no laughter of families, no hayrides, no carnival music, just silence, heavy and suffocating. Chance killed the engine. The sudden quiet roared in their ears. Waylon gripped his flashlight, the beam cutting through the rows. "This is it," he muttered. "The heart." Mateo swallowed hard, clutching the handle of a hatchet that looked too small in his trembling hands. "Feels like the heart's already beating." And it was. The ground under their boots throbbed faintly, almost like a pulse, subtle but enough to make every hair on their necks stand on end. They stepped into the rows. Pumpkins glistened in the mist, their skins damp as though sweating. Their shapes were perfect, round and fat, all lined like soldiers waiting for orders. Chance hauled the first gas can onto his shoulder, forcing a grin. "All right, boys, let's carve ourselves a bonfire." But the pumpkins shifted. Not much, just the faintest twitch, a scrape of vine against soil. Mateo froze. "Did you?" "Yes," Waylon cut in sharply, eyes darting. "Don't say it." The silence thickened. Then, faint and low, a sound rose from deep within the patch. Not wind, not animals, a groan, wet and ancient, rolling under the earth. The pumpkins trembled. Hundreds of them. And one by one they began to split. The first pumpkin split with a wet crack, seeds spilling across the soil like blood, then another and another. The sound multiplied, ripping, tearing, squelching, until the entire patch quivered in a grotesque chorus. Hundreds of mouths peeled open, rows of jagged teeth glistening in the dark. Vines snapped free of the earth, writhing like snakes, curling toward the sky. The ground shook beneath their boots. "Light it!" Waylon shouted, voice breaking. Chance fumbled with the gas can, sloshing fuel across the dirt, over the glossy orange shells, soaking vines that twitched against his ankles. Mateo's hands shook as he flicked a lighter, sparks dying uselessly in the wind. The first pumpkin lunged, vine snapping forward and slamming into Chance's chest. He flew back, gas can tumbling from his grip, ribs cracking against the ground. "Chance!" Mateo screamed. Waylon swung his flashlight like a club, smashing it into a smaller pumpkin. The beam flickered, glass shattering, but the thing only shrieked louder, biting through the metal head of the flashlight like it was candy. The chorus rose. Pumpkins dragged themselves from their rows, rolling, crawling, leaping forward with gnashing maws. Teeth clamped into fence posts, vines whipped through the mist, soil tore open like fresh wounds. Mateo flicked the lighter again. Flames sparked, tiny but real. He dropped it into the spreading gasoline. Fire roared to life, a line of flame racing across the field. Pumpkins shrieked, their bodies igniting, skin bubbling, pulp exploding like rotten fireworks. But for everyone that burned, more crawled from the dark earth, hundreds, maybe thousands, dragging themselves forward, jaws wide. Chance staggered to his feet, blood soaking his shirt. "We can't stop them all." Waylon grabbed his shoulder, face lit by fire and fear. "We don't need to stop them all. We just need to kill the root." Deep in the patch, past the rose, past the fire, something massive moved, a shadow taller than the cornstalks, a pumpkin bigger than a house. The heart. And it was waking. Flames devoured the rose, smoke billowing black into the night sky. Pumpkins shrieked and burst in the firestorm, their seeds popping like gunfire. But through the smoke something bigger stirred, something the fire couldn't touch. The ground split. From the earth rose a pumpkin so massive it dwarfed the houses of Pumpkin Eve. Its skin was split with deep scars, glowing faintly from within. Vines as thick as telephone poles tore free of the soil, snapping trees like twigs. Its maw opened wide, teeth jagged as fence posts, a furnace glow burning in its throat. The heart of the patch. Chance, Waylon, and Mateo stood before it, faces pale in the firelight. "Oh my God," Mateo whispered, voice breaking. Waylon's cigarette fell from his lips, forgotten. "That's not a pumpkin. That's the devil wearing skin." The beast roared, a sound so deep the earth vibrated. Windows shattered in town, birds scattered from the trees in a black cloud. Chance gritted his teeth, blood streaking his face. He hefted the last gas can, the slosh echoing. "No, it's just a pumpkin, and pumpkins burn." The giant vine lashed, slamming into the ground between them, soil erupting. The three men scattered, diving for cover. Mateo's lighter skidded across the dirt, flame flickering. He scrambled after it, vines snapping down inches from his back. Waylon grabbed an axe from the truck bed, swinging hard at a vine. It split under the blade, pulp spraying, but two more coiled around him, yanking him off his feet. He screamed, dragged toward the monster's maw. "Waylon!" Chance roared, hurling the gas can. It struck the giant pumpkin's side, fuel splashing across its glowing skin. He dove, grabbing Waylon's arm, teeth gritted as vines tried to tear him away. Mateo lit the flame, his eyes widened, terror and courage twisted together. "Burn, you bastard!" He tossed the lighter. The fire caught instantly, racing up the soaked skin. The giant pumpkin shrieked, a sound like metal screaming, vines thrashing wildly as fire consumed it. Seeds exploded, pulp raining from the sky. The earth split wider, swallowing rows of burning pumpkins, the field collapsing into a pit of flame and ash. Chance dragged Waylon clear, both of them coughing, faces streaked with blood and smoke. Mateo staggered to their side, ankle giving out, but he didn't let go of them. Together, the three watched the heart of the patch burn. And for a moment, just a moment, it looked like they had won. By dawn, the patch was gone. Black smoke drifted over the town, the once proud fields reduced to a wasteland of ash and twisted vines. Fire crews doused the last of the flames, their boots crunching over soil that still steamed. The air stank of smoke and rot, heavy enough to sting the eyes. Chance, Waylon, and Mateo sat on the tailgate of the Chevy, bloodied and burned, too exhausted to speak. Their clothes were shredded, their faces streaked with soot, but they were alive. Pumpkin Eve was silent. No laughter, no music, no tourists, just a town gutted by fire and fear. Sheriff Doyle limped past them, hat in his hand, eyes hollow. He gave a slow nod of thanks, but said nothing. What words could he offer? The trio watched as the flames ate the last of the vines. The massive heart of the patch collapsed into itself, skin cracking, maw split wide in a final scream before crumbling to ash. For a long moment, there was nothing. Then, a breeze stirred the soot. Something small rolled across the blackened earth. A seed. It was pale, slick, still wet with pulp. It bounced once, twice, then stopped at the edge of the field. The ground there trembled faintly, and beneath the soil something shifted. Waiting.